What I am going to talk about is what I've learned observing and listening to people. So mostly what I do is user experience research of various kinds, quantitative and qualitative. So I'm talking to people all the time. And as you can imagine, you guys probably run into this too. When you tell people what you do, they're like, oh my God, I have a story for you about this site that really, really sucks. Are you working on that? Can you fix that for me? On the way over here, my Uber ride, which was so really exciting because he drove right over the median and did lots of cool tricks, you know. But he's like, I know where this hotel is. Can you just look at my phone for a minute? And I was a little surprised because I do have an experiment in my mobile research where I ask people if I can look at their phone, and usually they don't let me touch their phones at all. But anyway, he handed me the phone. He's like, can you fix my settings? I can't get my Gmail to send. So you guys know what this is about, right? You can share this experience with me. This is all I do is research. This is my dog. It's gratuitous. I have to put him in every presentation for you to enjoy. He's listening, right? But we're going to be talking about, this is kind of what our journey is going to look like today. So it looks pretty bad in there, like the dog do and stuff like that. But what I'm going for is kind of a Stockholm Syndrome effect. So I'm hoping we'll come out of this, we'll hear some bad stuff, we'll hear some good stuff, there'll be a lot of data, there'll be some stories, and we'll come out of it understanding a little more about what makes people happy online. So my starting point for this is that so much of the news, so much of our culture tells us that technology is making us really unhappy. This came out in Forbes recently. The other 4% are probably lying. We know these stats. There's a lot of different reasons for this, but mostly it all stems from people being unhappy with that experience. There's that. And this isn't happening to us here, of course, but this is a big complaint. And in fact, from a project that I just wrapped up, I had somebody say this, and I was like, yeah, that pretty much sums it up for everyone. In fact, there's whole camps devoted to this where you can take a digital detox and everyone checks in their phones and other devices, and they shoot arrows, and they go on hikes, and then at night they probably sneak using their phone under their covers or something. That's what I imagine. But it's for grown-ups, not for kids. Of course, I consulted Google, who wouldn't, right? And I did a search for technology and happiness, and then I did a search for technology and unhappiness, almost identical results, as a matter of fact. And so we find out what happens is technology is making us happy. The New York Times says it makes us stupid. BBC says that it's taking away from real life. I even found the Werner Herzog movie about Siberia, where he says, oh, people in Siberia, I can't do a Werner Herzog accent, but maybe somebody else, are so much happier because they don't have technology. I've actually been to Siberia. That was long, I can talk about that later. Long story, used to be Russian studies. People are not happy in Siberia, okay? They're drinking heavily. I did kind of a data poll of Instagram, so I just pulled off a bunch of posts to see, okay, what's going on? What are people saying makes them happy? And you notice, screens are not in the mix. It's all puppy dogs and ice cream and stuff like that. So, obviously, it takes a lot of effort to make people happy. That might be part of it. But I know that technology can make us happy, right? We've all had our happy moments. There's a huge study going on in most countries now called it's like a global national happiness index based on the GMP. Bhutan started it, and they track all these different parameters about what makes people happy and how that tracks to various aspects of their lives. And so we can see now that they've been doing this for a few years is that access to technology, especially for women, especially in countries where they haven't had access to technology, drives happiness up. So there's something there. Of course, we've all had this feeling. This is from the latest research I'm doing with teens and tweens, and they're looking, to their devices for all the answers, but of course we do that too. It connects us, gratuitous family photo, in various ways to each other that we've never had before. That can make us happy. And so I thought back about some of my happy experiences. Some of these are maker moments. Some of these are not. Maybe you guys have some happy moments. If you just close your eyes for a minute. Just close your eyes. Think about your happy moments with technology. All right, were you guys able to come up with anything? Anything that you can share that's not like porn or something? FaceTime, okay. Yeah, awesome. Anyone else? Yeah.
My husband's from Denmark, and we were long distance for a year and a half, and we stayed in touch over Skype.
Nice, nice. Anyone else? Yeah.
Not getting lost as much.
Yeah, not getting lost. That's good. That's good. So I think we can all relate to all these. I brought my pets.com sock puppet. Just some of you guys haven't been around long enough to know pets.com, but I put its battery in, so I think he works. One more. Okay. You can look those up on YouTube. So, and we all stumble across stuff like this. Hopefully I can get this to go. This is a augmented reality app where they studied penguins, and they have the little penguins walking you to the Tokyo Aquarium, which I haven't been to Tokyo, but I looked at this a whole bunch of times and downloaded the app, and it just made me really happy. And there's other stuff like that we do, right? Like all the stories on weather.com that are so horrific, but you are compelled to click on them, and then you're like, oh God, I feel dirty now that I did that. But, we have those kinds of things. We probably have other things that we don't want to talk about. But so I know it makes us happy. And what I've noticed in pulling together all my research is that people feel very unhappy about sites and apps, but products themselves and their phone itself, there's a really strong attachment to. In this teen and tween study, I was talking to this one guy who's 13 years old, and we do this silly exercise of, if your phone was a person, who would it be? And a lot of people are like, oh, it'd be my best friend, or oh, it's my brain, or this. And he's like, if my phone was a person, I would marry it. And so we have this strong attachment, but it doesn't extend to the sites and apps. So we think that big things are going to make us happy. And this is true of technology. It's also something that comes out of behavioral economics and positive psychology, that we think it's going to be big adventures like travel, it's going to be money, it's going to be creating the perfect user experience. It's going to be getting famous. There he is again. And in design, we think, we look to the innovators. So we say, okay, let's look at Medium. Let's look at GoBank in the banking world. I do a lot of work in financial services, so I have to think about them a lot. Let's look to Uber and see if the answer lies there of true happiness. So I'm gonna have you guys do a little quiz. So we have a big data set. We're always getting feedback on, it's about 250 sites, and we're using kind of a regular set of metrics that we use for everything, and a few of those metrics are around happiness. So which of these two sites, which you guys are probably familiar with, at least Expedia, maybe not Hipmunk, but just based on your impression or what you know, which one do you think made people happier? That's what I thought too. No. So guess what? We may not know what really makes us happy online, and we can't just blindly look to innovators and say, yeah, they know what they're doing because their site is all 2014 beautiful, and that's what we like. When you ask people what makes them happy online, they're invariably going to say, I like sites that are easy to use, beautifully designed, and help me to do what I need to do. But in fact, when you look at the sites in our data set of the ones that make people happy, they are often sites that are not so easy to use, where maybe they thought they accomplished what they set out to do, but they didn't accomplish what we asked them to do, and they might not be very attractive. In design, and I got this from Shutterstock, so they collect all the data of like what people are searching for as far as what they're using for design. We don't have any carousels in here. That's an improvement. No hamburgers. But this gives us a good picture of what is 2014 beautiful according to the design world. The other problem with measuring happiness and figuring out what makes people happy is we don't remember what makes us happy. So if we had more time today, I'd have you take a minute and just quickly sketch your favorite site. It could be a site you use all the time. You don't have to do this right now. You guys are looking worried. There's like worried glances. Is she going to make me sketch something right now? I did one of mine, a guilty pleasure that I'm on way too much. And this is how I drew it. Now, if you could use your phones right now, which you can't, you could look at ModCloth and see I'm totally wrong because I've focused on where I pay attention to the site. I don't remember any of the other aspects of the site, and there are many. And that's very typical when I've run this experiment with about 100 people. It's the same story over and over again. People don't remember much. So all these details that we sort of slavishly, try to tweak, they're not registering for people. Got another quick quiz. Again, which one do you think made people happier of these two? This one's tougher because they're kind of close in what they look like. Yeah. Again, I thought Nova too because it's a little bit cleaner. And let's face it, we're smart people. It's a little more highbrow than Mythbusters is, So, but no. Because what happens is happiness is cumulative. So people have more happy moments. On Discovery, on Nova, they looked at it and then they kind of didn't look at the rest of the site and left. On Discovery Channel, they kept true to the name, I guess, discovering things. And they came away with more happy moments that ended up to a feeling that they took away. So, okay, we know that technology makes us unhappy. Maybe like our phones can make us happy, but sites and apps don't. We don't really know what makes us happy. We can't remember we can't remember anything about the sites. This is really disturbing, right? We're down at the lows of the diagram at the beginning. So let's try to get out of there. How do we really figure out what makes people happy online? So I had this hunch. I said, I think happiness is important because we had started measuring it, and I could see that it tracked to all these other things like likelihood to recommend and likelihood to return and their overall rating of the site. And I said, I think this is really important, but how can I find out more about happiness? And so, of course, I always turn to data because even though I'm a qualitative researcher at heart and I love to talk to people, I also appreciate getting various kinds of inputs to figure out what's going on. So like I said, our quantitative data kind of set me off on this path, but then what I do with my field research is I aggregate it. So, and clients, of course, love this because I'm kind of piggybacking on their research, but I'm not revealing anything from their research unless I have permission to do so. But tracking things like happiness, number of times that people are happy during a session, expressing it, or just I'm getting a visual on it, what they rate it afterwards, and then even following up with some people and seeing what do they remember a week after, 2 weeks after. So this is kind of my inside joke. If you guys follow me on Twitter, I just really related to this. This is the Panda Research Center at the Oolong Panda Reserve in China, and so that the baby pandas don't get used to humans, they dress up in panda suits. So if you were thinking, wow, that's a weird-looking panda, yeah, it is, because it's a person. And I kind of feel like that when I'm out in the field, although I haven't worn a panda suit yet. But I'm always looking for the opportunity for that to come up, as I am always looking for the opportunity for a project in Hawaii, say, but never seems to materialize. But anyway, if you see me tweet panda time, you know what's going on. That's what I'm doing. I'm in the field. So, okay, let's try something else. This is the Virgin site, and I want you guys to silently judge it. Richard Branson will be okay with that, I'm sure. So what I want you to do is on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 the lowest, 10 the highest, just quietly think to yourself, don't shout out your rating. How does the site make you feel? Okay, kind of initial read on it. Okay, I'm going to ask you guys, but don't change your rating based on somebody else. Okay. All right, let me just pick some people. How about you in the red shirt? Mm-hmm. 7, okay. Anyone else? Let's see. How about you in the back with the glasses? 6. Yellow sweater? 7. Anyone else have a strong feeling one way or the other? So I don't have to pick on you. 2. Yeah. What did you said something too? 2. Okay. So we have a wide range. And there's a reason for that, right? Because happiness is really subjective. That makes it hard to measure. So your 7 is your 2, is somebody else's 10, probably the Virgin Design team's 10. It varies, right? And we show it. So not only is it subjective, but we show it differently. This is a great project. This is Selfie City. And what they did is they scooped the data from all these selfies in all these cities around the world, and then they tracked it to the facial expressions to see how people showed happiness. And you can see Moscow, not Siberia, but, you know, Moscow's pretty low. New York, where I live, not so good. Bangkok, that's where we all need to head after this. Okay, so pretty good. But, and part of this is just who we are. So about 50% of our feelings of happiness are genetic. So we can't really change it. It's just how we're coded. So in doing this research, I have been tracking my happiness with an app. And I was talking to my husband, and I said, you know, I've got like about 50 happy moments a day. And I wasn't getting competitive, honestly. You know, I was just, but anyway, and he's like, wow, I'm lucky if I have one happy moment a day. So opposites attract, I guess, right? So, and then 10% is circumstances. So what behavioral economists have learned is that wealth doesn't do that much for you beyond a certain point. As long as your basic comfort level is okay, you can feed yourself, you have shelter, all that. More money doesn't really add that much to your happiness. So for all of you guys like at startups who are like thinking, yeah, I'm going to get rich and be really, really happy even though I'm miserable now and I'm sleeping under my desk, think about that a little more. So, but 40% we can actually change. So this is the part that in user experience we can work with to make people happier when they use our sites. So as I mentioned before, we do an online study, and this is, you'll see some of the sites in here, and it's not comprehensive. I mean, there's a lot of obstacles to doing this on public sites. We can't do sites where people have to be authenticated, so social media isn't on there, like your authenticated online banking experience isn't in there, stuff like that. But we try to get a good broad sample of sites and people to look at them. And then I do some experiments with informed consent, of course, obviously, not like Facebook or anything, where I have people do stuff like draw sites from memory or things like that to see where I kind of have gaps in my other data, and I'm trying to fill that. This is a really fun experiment with British Airways did with the happy blanket. So what they did, apparently, is had people wear this blanket, and if it's blue, it shows that you're happy. And then if it's red, you're unhappy. And so I don't know what happens when it's red. Maybe the stewardess comes and hugs you or something like that. I don't know. Or they give you a drink. You know, here, drink. But they're using, and it's mapped to sort of brainwave technology, which we saw in the last one. And I have my own sort of brainwave technology thing that I like to use. I love getting people to wear this. It's awesome. Let's see if I can get it to work. My hair's going to look really dorky after this. Okay, so I clip that. That's to my brain, right directly in there, you know. It's like, oh my God, I'm freaking out right now. Then you clip it to your ear, then you turn it on. And then if I left this on, you would see like when it would be very boring to have this on because I'll be like alert the whole time. But if I was just walking around, they'd kind of droop or like, do that or whatever. And so it's kind of on that level. And there's some like fun companies and experiments working with brainwave technology. Now it's clipped to my hair. That's awkward. There we go. And so I didn't do any experiments with brainwaves. I just think that's fun. But I am experimenting on you guys. Some of you guys have mood rings. What's going on is anyone blue yet? Are we getting to blue? All right, anyone not at blue yet? Okay, I'm gonna really focus on you. The rest of you guys, forget about it. I'm working on her now. No, I guess what I'm pointing out here is that there are some imperfect means of getting at biometrics right now, but that's going to get better and more interesting to do that. So when I'm studying happiness, people say, are you studying delight? Do you mean delight? And we're really obsessed with delight, right? Because it's shiny, and it's like those special moments, and we want to create special moments for people. But I really am looking at this. There's a lot of different levels of happiness, and some of these are, you might have a moment of delight, and then after a week it becomes, just a happy or a content, or it might be a site that you're using all the time and you're content. So I'm using a scale and looking at it in various ways when we talk about this. So what we found is when we feel happy, we think a site's better. Whether it is or not, that's another question. I don't know if there's any objective reality like that to tell us whether a site is better or not. So you can see some of the ones at the top. Of course, Amazon, so annoying. Why are they at the top of everything? It's really making me, an Apple is up there. Come on. So there's some banks up there just because we have banking data sets. I don't know it's because people love banks or anything like that. So this just gives you a sense of some of them. For those of you guys who saw this morning's talk, you'll notice healthcare.gov is down there, and that's from December, so after they had fixed a little bit of the stuff already, not the initial launch. We gave them a little bit of a shot. So I took all the sites that ranked really highly, and I said, yeah, let's do some social media sentiment analysis and see if that translates to people having, good conversations about those brands, and yes, it does. So that's another takeaway. So happiness, it's important. The sites that people feel happy about, they rate highly. So what can we do about it? Like, oh yeah, that's all well and good. We want people feeling happy. Are we going to just go hug people, or what are we going to do? So I've come up with kind of 4 principles, patterns that I've seen across these sites. Here's the first one. We're happy when we feel smart. So this means autonomy to some level. So it's something that often is familiar, something you can do really easily, something that you recognize from all the other sites that you use. And that's, I think, why Expedia came out a little better than Hipmunk, even though I thought, the designer in me said, oh, no, that can't possibly be. We've also looked at correlated usability with happiness, and we can see without usability, there is no happiness. 65. That's a magic number. We do use a 100-point scale, so I know it's so silly to have a number on it. It's like, you've got to get it 65. But that's where happiness starts. If you don't have ease of use, you may as well just not bother. And definitely gives you good reason to not put CAPTCHAs on your site. So control is another part of this making people feel smart. So when we looked at a lot of the healthcare sites together, one of the ones we looked at was eHealth. And this was a site that made people feel really like they were in control of what was going on and confident about something that they might feel anxious about. Time is something that a lot of people try to track to engagement, but also to ease of use. And we found that there was more of a correlation between time and ease of use. So if people felt like they were spending their time fruitlessly, then they were not going to be happy in the short term or the long term. Whereas for engagement, it seemed like it didn't matter very much. So, and then finally, for making people feel smart, sometimes it's not so easy, but it's that they've mastered something. So something that I've worked with a lot, because I have a lot of entertainment clients, is the cable login, right, which we all like hate, and we put in other people's credentials and whatever. I know what you guys do. So, but once people have this down, they feel like, oh yeah, okay, I can do it. And mastery is actually one of the most powerful ways to make people feel smart, because then they'll go talk about it and they'll recommend it. So sometimes having something that's hard, but it's like worth the effort, actually makes sense to people and makes them want to tell other people about it. So the takeaway here is we want to design so people can be independent and feel smart. The second principle is design as if there's a real person in there. So this comes away from a comment that I had recently in some research where somebody said this, and I was like, yeah, that is so true. We talk a lot about putting together our sites in sort of a simple, easy language, but it still sounds a little stilted a lot of times. It still doesn't sound like we're talking to a person like I would talk to this person who's not yet blue on her mood ring, just one-on-one, right? So that's what we want to do. So yes, authenticity is a part of it. It needs to feel like a real conversation. Respect is a part of this, though, too. This is something that came up again and again, is that people want to feel like there's boundaries and that you respect who they are and what they are bringing to this, which is often their data, right? Because if something's free, you're the product as the user, right? So, because it's your data, that's the product. And then finally, care. So you can see that Amazon's looking out for me and says, don't buy those again. You already bought those. And people respect, these little touches are what makes people feel kind of nurtured. This came out in Harvard Business Review, and I feel like this is a really complicated way of looking at the relationships, fascinating though, that we have with technology as a whole and sites. And so I don't know if we have to go down this path where, is it a guru-disciple relationship, or is it a one-night stand, or what kind of relationship do we have with these people? I think the takeaway here is design as if we're friends in real life. So if you're, especially when you're looking at content on your site, if you're looking to refine that, you want that voice to be as if you're talking to one person as a friend. Okay, third thing. This seems a little bit antithetical, right? I said, we want to make people feel smart. We want it to feel familiar. But we also want to be really engaged because we get sick of stuff really fast. So this is, if you guys have seen this Louis C.K. video, you probably all have, right? Where it's like everything is amazing and no one's happy. So first we could fly, then we had cocktails, then we had Wi-Fi, then we could even lay down on the planes, and it still sucks. It's not good enough. Or if you're married, for instance, you're familiar with this concept where you've become accustomed to things. And anyway, I'll speak no further of that. I'm going to get into trouble if I talk about that anymore. Okay, so what does this mean? Play. You can try things without risk. This is a site that lets people play around with something that is not very playful, mortgages. People just love it because there's no credit hit, there's no risk to giving your information, there's nothing, they can kind of goof around with it and play out different scenarios and imagine sort of possible futures for themselves, and that's really important. Variety, surprising people a little bit. So, right, in the delight sense, we're always thinking about what's that little surprise that's going to like push it over the edge and make it like super delightful. And there's even sites, I think like Little Big is a Tumblr blog that documents all these cool little teeny tiny details that probably a lot of people miss, but we're all really tuned into. But there is a place for those in happiness, and it's here in this rich environment. Where we can take kind of delight in those special treats. And then there's just purely curiosity. This always surprises me, because WebMD, I look at the site and I'm just like, oh my God, there's too much. People love it, and they especially love, I don't know if you guys, does my little thing work? Down here, top searches. They love little details like this, where it shows what other people are doing and so they don't have to feel ashamed about what they're looking for. They feel like, oh, okay, I'm curious about that, but guess what? Other people are curious too. So when we look at the idea of engagement, we find that the more happy moments that people have along the way, and this is where variety comes into play as well, that the higher their happiness rating is at the end, and the higher they rate it a week later after they've used the site. So the more little moments sprinkled through that give variety, it actually does have an impact overall. So, design for the thrill of the new. Finally, the last principle, I think, that we found from this data is continuity. So what do I mean by continuity? Well, a few different things, right? We want to feel some kind of connectedness with the world. So I've been going to some different conferences, non-UX conferences, and one of those was a conversion conference. And it's all about the landing page and the funnel and like just get them to click the button, you know, and it's all A/B testing and all that. And that's really far afield from making people happy. I mean, of course, people, if that's something they want to do, that's fine, but it's not making them feel happy. So I think there's some components of this continuity. First of all, recognizing that there is no sort of digital real-life divide anymore. People are very cognizant of that now. That's very fluid, the divide between those two things. So it's not like, oh, I'm going to go online now. Now I'm in real life, you know. And so this is the line right here, you know. So sites like Mint rank very well in our data set for that reason. They're bridging those two together, and they're doing it on mobile really well. And that's usually where that comes into play. Curation, this continuity piece is all about sort of playing out possible selves. And so one pattern that we've seen is that people are really like to discover new ways that they can live their lives, basically. And so sites that do that kind of pull that together for them. Netflix is another big one, and that's what this quote is about. So somehow, even though I know it's not personal, it feels really personal, and people are willing to overlook that and see it as a kind of continuity. And then finally, kind of an aspirational component to this. So people love the Apple site, and it's not because most of them are not going to buy Apple products. A lot of the people I talk to, they're just not, or they already have. But it feels like the site thinks I'm a little cooler than I am. It kind of speaks to that me that I want to be, and so that's something that leaves people with a very happy feeling when I leave the site. So for the continuity, designing for past, present, and future is what you want to do. So what's the result of all this? What do people do when they're happy on sites? Well, when they're happy, they have greater engagement. So we track engagement on a variety of different metrics that are, some are event stream and some are single metrics. And I'd love to talk metrics with you all day, but that's not what this is about. But anyway, we can see that there's a strong connection there. We can also see that there's more recommendations when people are happy. So that once the happiness is there, it spreads. So Facebook did this without our knowing. They proved kind of the same principle, that happiness breeds more happiness. And then finally, the happier people are, the more likely they are to return and come back again and make that site part of their daily routine. So how do we keep finding the things that make us happy? We have to measure before, during, and after. This is kind of my happy experience continuum that I try to track a lot of these different points. So we're very concerned with the now, and so are the analytics people too, curiously enough. But we need to broaden that reach out to before and after, and the right before, and the long hereafter. And we want to keep in mind the principles of helping people feel smart, nurtured, challenged, and connected. So I think you guys are ready to take the pledge. I'd like you guys to raise your right hands. Okay. I solemnly swear to the users who I love, to the superstars in this room, to my new friend Pamela, that I will always practice happiness first design. With the power vested in me as speaker, I pronounce you an awesome audience. Thank you very much. And if you want to read more about this, easiest way is probably follow me on Twitter. I'll tweet out this deck and some other related articles that were the source of this or that came out of it. Thanks so much, you guys.